cracker is a dead cracker. Only good 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 cracker is a dead cracker. I get close enough, push you right into that crack. You heard what I said, cracker. Neanderthal, I don't give a fuck what you say. Fuck you, cracker. Fuck you, cracker. Fuck you, cracker.
We gotta get out of the road.
Let's get out of the road, please. Get out of the road, please.
You still a cracker? You still a cracker? You a cracker, motherfucker. You a cracker. You a cracker. He a cracker. You a cracker. You a cracker. You ain't gonna get me, cracker. They've been trying to get me, cracker. You ain't gonna get me, cracker. You.
If evidence does come out that Karmelo was not in fact fighting for his life when he stabbed and killed Austin Metcalf, do you think that the black community will accept that?
If evidence shows that he did not, no, we're going to stand by ours regardless. They stand by theirs. We're going to stand by ours regardless. I'm a mother first. I'm a black mother. Let me put that on there. I'm an African-American mother. So I have to put away my color first and step into the motherhood. Nobody wants to see their child slain. So I do want to send prayers to Austin Metcalf, their family. But at the end of the day, I got to think like, okay, what did you do to him or whatever to cause this to happen, the reaction? We got to start taking accountability for our kids. Wants to see their child slain. So I do want to send prayers to Austin Metcalf, their family. But at the end of the day, I got to think like, okay, what did you do to him or whatever to cause this to happen, the reaction? We got to start taking accountability for our kids.
And let's just go ahead and call it what it is. They don't care about the truth. It doesn't even matter. The fact that he's black, that's all I need to know. I don't care if he intentionally wanted to murder Austin Metcalf. I don't care if he didn't even consider self-defense. I don't care if he's completely guilty in the eyes of the law. We need to defend him at all costs. And the question is this: how can you call that justice, but in the same breath demand justice from other people in this country? It just doesn't make sense to me. What type of people, what type of community would think that way?
Because then again, if my kid, that's why it's a catch-22, if my kid was Karmelo and I feel like his back was up against the wall, well, I'm going to tell you straight up, better mine than yours. Better mine than yours. So either way it go, everybody loses. A black boy allegedly murdered, and I say allegedly, heavy on the allegedly murdered somebody. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, this is about race. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't give a damn.
But she doesn't care about that. Why? Because he's black. Is that what we're going to do as a country? It doesn't matter about accountability. What matters is that the person is black, so screw it. Yeah, it's uncommon times, as I put it.
I come out here every Thursday and we pray for people going to court, because we know this is the final frontier of racism, and it's legalized here.
It was announced yesterday that there's no black jurors that were chosen. What are your thoughts on that?
That's why we need God. That's why we need God, and that's why he's going to show who's in control.
And would you be open to giving us your personal insights into the Karmelo Anthony trial and what your thoughts are on it?
I just want justice done. You know, we know nobody go to a track meet to murder anybody, okay? Come on. That's an accident, self-defense, that's what it was. I'm not saying the kid should get off free, but first-degree murder? Basically, he's facing the wrong charge for the crime that was committed.
Do you think Karmelo is innocent? Do you feel like it's been an unfair response to what happened to Karmelo Anthony?
I feel that the justice system always over-respond when it comes to us. So definitely, I mean, you look at the charge. It was self-defense. He was wrestling with two guys. I don't know what the parameters of it, but it was two people. So, you know, 2 against 1, that's self-defense.
But obviously when you're unarmed and you push somebody without even knocking them over, because you're trying to get them to leave a place where they don't belong, you're not using lethal force. The person you push is not allowed to murder you because he can't possibly have a reasonable fear for his life under those circumstances, obviously. And if the attacker is in the wrong team's tent, where he's not supposed to be, and he's daring someone to push him, and he knows he has a knife and his victim doesn't, there is no viable self-defense claim, period. You cannot walk into a place where you don't belong, dare someone to make physical contact with you, knowing you have a knife, knowing they don't have one, and then the moment they do, stab them to death. Obviously, you can't do that. That is not self-defense.
I didn't see in the reporting, as I continue to say, that he was on the ground, that they were choking him out. It didn't even get to that. And so it was, hey, I'm going to remove you from this place because you shouldn't be sitting here. It wasn't like, if you don't move, I'm going to kill you. That wasn't the threat that came from Austin Metcalf. So that's where I'm having a hard time saying, oh, this is without question self-defense. And again, this should not be a racial issue. This should be an issue. What is the definition of self-defense in the state of Texas?
I don't know how the trial is going to end up going, but I think that once you pull a knife out on a person who does not have a weapon and you say, touch me again and see what happens, therefore you have now created premeditation. Because you could just move, but you don't want to move, and you're creating a scenario where you are not trying to avoid a situation.
The narrative that we've heard from the beginning since April of 2025 that Karmelo Anthony was under that tent for no good reason. He was just there, and then Austin Metcalf and his friends came up to approach him to say, get out from under the tent, to which Karmelo Anthony, the prosecution says, got aggressive, reached in that bag, pulled out a knife, and stabbed Austin Metcalf.
You cannot stab someone in the chest and kill them because they touch you. I think a lot of what this case is going to come down to is going to remind us of what happened in the O.J. Simpson case. The race card is going to be played.
Chosen to decide the closely watched murder trial of Karmelo Anthony.
More than 500 people were on the list of potential jurors, but the jury will not include anyone who is black, despite this case being racially charged. Fox 4's Alex Boyer joining us now. Alex.
Hey guys, good evening. That's right. And I can tell you that a court spokesperson confirmed that there are indeed no black jurors on this panel. And I can tell you that before this jury panel was seated, the defense objected to 3 black women being struck by the prosecution. Now, the prosecution contended that it was due to the fact that the women were educators, noting that this incident happened at a school function with young students. The defense then pointed out that those were 3 of those were 100% of the available black jurors in what's called the strike zone, adding that the state struck all 3. The judge went out and reviewed their questionnaires and came back and said that the defense's challenge to the 3 jurors being dismissed was denied. The judge said the court found that the state had non-racial means to strike the juror.
So you live in Frisco, Texas. It's very small. So when you start to get a jury of your peers, it's not a lot of black people that live there anyway. So you're not going to get a lot of black jurors. The argument that it's a problem because there's no black jurors is an argument of a person who's a racist. Because to be quite honest, white people sometimes advocate more aggressively for black people than black people do. And these white people that carry this, what we call white guilt. And they want to be a white savior. So sometimes these white people are more radical to support black people when they shouldn't, more so than black people are willing to support black people when they shouldn't. So just because everybody's white don't mean that necessarily it's a biasy, unless you're a racist and you believe that every white person can't be impartial when it comes to stuff. That's silly to me. But some people are still making that argument.
That where he shared their posts. He played around black people. He loved black people. So they're trying to paint him as a racist. It's a lie.
What is up, it's Kamel? I missed this friend and teammate. Seemed like they were maybe good friends. At least Austin inspired him. And I guess this doesn't fit the narrative and it doesn't work out for the Karmelo family. Austin Metcalf alluding and insinuating that Metcalf or the Metcalf boys or the Metcalf family is racist. And so here's a friend. I hate that this happened to you, man. I'm forever defend your name.
The twins, their 2 buddies, and a few other kids, because there was a few kids involved with them. They were all coming from the direction of the middle school, coming walking back up.
Right.
On the video, you can see those 4 that actually was involved, and maybe about 3 or 4 others that was with them, skipping up, trying to catch up behind. One veered off probably toward his way to go to the coach and kind of distract them a little bit. And then the other 4 came walking together. One went in front of them, went past. Right. The other 4 went and they surrounded Karmelo. You know, if you're Karmelo.
And they show that on that video.
It's on the video.
Okay, come on.
You can see him walk
I'm gonna
up.
say little
And
stuff.
I'll put it this way.
Okay.
They actually tell you when you're watching the video, pay attention to this corner right here, because if you look anywhere else, you might miss different things.
Okay.
So watch those four. Here, there are four right there coming up.
Right.
That's exactly what they say.
Okay.
And so you have no way to be confused that it's those four.
Okay.
So they come up, they surround them, and it's immediate moment of not even a few seconds of pause. Then that's when they jump. And so
they actually did jump him.
Yeah, it wasn't just no touch. It wasn't just all that moment. Yeah, it was a push. It was all kind of things. But Austin pushed, Hunter hit, and then everybody swung. But at the same time,
So it's more than the twins that got some licks
all
on
four.
them. So it showed that in the video.
Yes, in the video. So again, you got Hunter and Austin standing in the middle.
Okay.
And you have the light bright boy here, and you have the darker boy here.
Okay.
I think that's what I remember. So I have to go back and think about it. But that's where they were. One was going up and down while they were talking and kind of pushing or whatever he was doing. Austin and Hunter was in front. So where they're talking about grabbing bags, Hunter actually said that I grabbed his bag.
Right.
And then later on, he said that Austin threw the bag.
Okay.
Jeff also said the same thing. And so that's them both antagonizing. And we know under Texas law, I just have the fear that you're about to do something to me and you can get up out of here. Yeah, so you don't have to touch me. But at that point, he still stood there and stopped there. And whatever they say alleged was said, you don't know that until they get into it here. But once they did that, they started hitting him. Karmelo actually was able to back out and try to get away. So he was actually trying to get away the first time. Austin grabbed him, and you can see his hoodie coming out like this, and they brought him back in.
Okay.
And when they brought him back in, that's when you can see Austin put him in a headlock. You can see that all the rest of them are still hitting. That must be when the poke happened, because he was able to get out again. He backed out. He looked to the right. That's where the other little kid was filming, because they got some cell phone footage too. But that's where he was filming. He looked directly at him in his camera, and then he went this way to the left. He went down. He fell. And that's when they realized he was gone, because they were still punching. And when he fell, that's when they all turned around. They started chasing him. Austin tried to go chase him too, but he grabbed his chest. I guess he realized that something happened to him. And that's when he went down a little bit and he fell down. But all three of them were chasing. But Karmelo was so fast, he got away and went around to the coach. And so you can see them on the video pointing toward Karmelo and the coach. And I can imagine, because Karmelo's out of the camera on that moment, that he was telling the coach what happened. And then that's when Hunter said he whipped his head around. That's a true statement. He just wasn't sitting when he did it. He whipped his head around, you see him on the video, and that's when he walked over to where Austin was, but he never touched him. So all that stuff about him rendering aid and holding his heart, he never did that, because the coach grabbed him and he was holding him. So at the end of the day, that's kind of where the moment went. But they did assault him, and we'll just play the game. Even if it was just a push, you still assaulted him, because it was unwanted. By your own definition in your word of him saying that leave me alone and I'm not going, you assaulted him, period. But they did beat him. And if you look at the, not the photo that Fox 4 put out, because that was one that they actually edited. I have the emails to prove it. But the actual Collin County one, you can see the webs and stuff on his eye. You can see the bridge of his nose is swollen. You can see the webs under his neck.
In a trial yesterday, they seated a jury, but I'm overjoyed there are no black people on this jury. I know people will be upset with me. I don't want anybody on this jury that's sitting there thinking about, I got to do the black thing. I hear the facts different because I'm black. We don't need a black perspective on this murder trial. We need a justice perspective on this murder trial. And American black people seem to struggle to take the racial lens off of how they see things. Do white people have the same struggle? Yes, but it's more pronounced with black people. Those are uncomfortable truths, but it's a fact.
In fact, some of his responses were not honest at all. This is a quote from NBC in Dallas, which had a reporter in courtroom. And it says, quote, Prosecutor Bill Werski continued his opening statement saying that Karmelo Anthony lied to investigators when he said he told Austin Metcalf not to touch him. He knows what he did. He knows he provoked the murder, Werski said. And that lie tells you all you need to know about his mindset that day. You simply cannot provoke someone, and when they push you, take their life, prosecutor said. Now, later on, the same prosecutor stated, according to witnesses, that Karmelo Anthony did say to Austin Metcalf, touch me and see what happens. So in other words, Anthony went into the 10 that was reserved for Austin Metcalf's team And then when Metcalf told Anthony to leave, which he had every right to tell him to leave, Anthony responded by daring Metcalf to physically move him from the tent, along with a thinly veiled threat. Anthony also reached into his bag as if he was going to produce a weapon, which Metcalf and all the witnesses in the tent thought was a bluff. That's evidently very different from the version of events that Anthony presented to investigators, in which Anthony was just minding his own business, telling Metcalf not to touch him, and then Metcalf grabbed him for no reason. In reality, Anthony was belligerent. He was looking for an opportunity to use the illegal flip knife that he was carrying, which he knew was a prohibited item. Rather than simply leaving the tent, which he could have done, he began reaching into his bag for the knife, and before long, he dared Austin Metcalf to make physical contact, presumably so that he could have a pretext to murder him, which he did. Karmelo Anthony was trying to leave the scene. There's no question about that. Now, contrast this behavior with, say, Kyle Rittenhouse or Daniel Penny or George Zimmerman or Rick Chow, who we talked about earlier in the week, or anyone else who engaged in lawful self-defense and who the left tried to send to prison for the rest of their lives. None of these people attempted to flee after they eliminated the threat. Kyle Rittenhouse walked towards the police in Kenosha. Daniel Penny remained on the subway platform. George Zimmerman didn't move an inch from the pavement where Trayvon Martin tried to smash his head into a pulp. Rick Chow stayed at his gas station, voluntarily provided a comprehensive statement to police the moment they arrived. But first, we need to talk about the prosecution's stated reason for passing on several of the black potential jury members. In this news report, you're simply told that some of them are teachers and that the prosecution is wary of having teachers on the jury since they work with students like Metcalf and Anthony. Of course, the real reason is that teachers are mostly communists, and female teachers in particular have mostly had their brains rotted out by social justice propaganda. Note that one teacher was allowed on the jury pool, although he doesn't deal with teenagers, so the prosecution allowed him to hear the case. But in any event, the demented race hustlers who apparently still represent Karmelo Anthony put out this statement about the situation. Quote, "The Next Generation Action Network is outraged by today's jury selection process in the Karmelo Anthony trial. The prosecution used its final strikes to remove the remaining qualified black jurors from the jury pool, raising serious concerns about fairness and equal justice. We respect the court, but we will not remain silent. NGAN will continue monitoring this case and informing the public every step of the way. Every person deserves a fair trial and confidence that justice is being administered without bias. We're calling on the court to ensure Mr. Anthony's constitutional rights are fully protected." Now, there's a few very important things to understand here. Just as a preliminary matter, some of these potential black jury members were obviously unqualified, as I just mentioned. One of them even said that he would never put a brother behind bars. So he said the quiet part out loud. Obviously, he can't be on the jury. Watch.
Potential jurors were also asked if the age of the 19-year-old defendant, who was 17 when authorities say he fatally stabbed 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a track meet, would influence their judgment, as well as his race. One prospective juror, who prosecutors identified as African American, said he would have a hard time putting a brother in jail. But a question from Anthony's attorney, Mike Howard, drew the ire of several prospective jurors when he asked them, "How do you feel about the country's immigration policies?" A number of them refused to answer, saying it was irrelevant.
So this was a highly dysfunctional process, but not for the reasons that Karmelo Anthony's lawyers are suggesting. Think about how revealing this is. The defense team wanted to know the jury's opinion on open borders. Now, there's only one reason to ask that question in the context of this case, which obviously has nothing to do with open borders. They want Democrats on the jury. That's it. They're using the immigration question as a proxy to figure out the political affiliation of the jurors. And the defense team is doing that because they understand that Democrats are the party of social unrest and revolutionary activism and anti-white racism. Democrats are lockstep, and in everything they do, they want to promote the narrative that whites are the oppressor and blacks are the victims. And in this case, that means they'd vote to acquit for, obvious reasons. As for the black juror who openly admitted that he wouldn't put a black defendant in prison, at least he was honest. The typical black juror who's racially biased doesn't go around admitting it. But the statistics here are pretty clear on this point. There have been plenty of studies on this, and we'll throw some of them up on the screen right now. Black juries are roughly 30% less likely to find a black defendant guilty as compared to a white defendant, and black juries are 300% more likely to find a white criminal guilty. That's how we got the O.J. Simpson verdict. And if Karmelo Anthony's defense team manages to select a juror who thinks like this, then they're guaranteed a hung jury at a minimum. With America's 250th birthday around the corner, there's no better time than to learn something new about our country. Our friends at
Good cracker is a dead cracker. Only good cracker is a dead cracker.
He was not an aggressor. Karmelo was not an aggressor. He was minding his damn business when the boys came up to him.
We the crowd. We the queen. Karmelo Anthony will walk free. We the crowd.
They silenced Karmelo and his family.
Anthony will walk free. We the crowd. We the queen. Karmelo Anthony will walk free.
Now, it's a cliche to even point this out, but imagine the hysteria if white people did this. Imagine if, instead of walking into the Capitol building and taking Nancy Pelosi's lectern, a development that led to 5 million FBI raids and congressional investigations, imagine if white people in large numbers paraded in front of a courthouse in 2026 calling for the indiscriminate murder of black people. Now think back 60 years to the civil rights era and imagine that the peaceful protesters were actually saying the exact same things this guy's saying. Actually, you don't have to imagine it. That's exactly what happened. But you get the sense that Karmelo's defense team is a little upset with these demonstrators. I mean, obviously, their goal is to intimidate the jury, and that strategy might work. At the same time, for this trial, it's clear that Karmelo's lawyers want to hide the fact that he's a barbarian. And to that end, Karmelo Anthony's defense team has tried to dress him up to make him seem, less thuggish. You can see the courtroom sketches there. They've made sure their client is clean cut, given an oversized suit to make him seem like a child. But it's all theater. And actually, one of the coaches made this point when he was being questioned on the stand yesterday. He told the jury that Karmelo Anthony now looks nothing like he did last year when he stabbed Austin Metcalf to death. But if we're being honest, the defense team probably isn't worried about that testimony. In fact, they're not worried about any of the testimony or any of the evidence. From the moment they took this case, they understood that Karmelo Anthony has just one chance of acquittal. They need to get one of those activists from outside the courthouse inside the jury pool. Now, with certainty, we could say that they failed to get black activists on the panel, but whether or not Karmelo Anthony is convicted now depends on whether or not any of the remaining jurors are loyal members of the Democratic Party or otherwise leftist activists. It's a very sad state of affairs, but that's the reality of the so-called rule of law and the so-called criminal justice system in this country.